podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm your host, Simone Sweeney, and in this new series, Getting Started as a Coach, I'm excited to introduce you to experts and coaching thought leaders who will share their passion and experience to help new and aspiring coaches get the insight and information they need to understand the industry, make more informed decisions, and successfully start out in the world of coaching. This series of Getting Started as a New Coach was designed to help new and aspiring coaches or those curious to develop their coaching practice further to explore many of the key themes, areas of challenge, and opportunities that the world of coaching brings. In this final episode, we bring together so much of the wisdom from three incredibly experienced coaches. Throughout this episode, we explore both the practical realities as well as many thought-provoking and inspirational aspects of coaching. We cover topics like marketing and how to attract clients, the importance of trust, both in your coaching relationships and those with your client and partners, and how your network is a key opportunity to build your client base. We also speak about the importance of understanding your proposition and how to price that, looking at the elephant in the room of things like discount and pro bono coaching. We also explore some of the tools and ways and also means of knowing when you need help in the importance of delegation and outsourcing at the right time. Each of my guests also talks about imposter syndrome and how important it is to keep confidence and keep your nerve in coaching, and they offer some tips on how to develop your confidence as a new coach. We also explore the future of coaching and what excites Jeremy, Jeannette, and Chloë. This was a fantastic, inspiring, and really practical episode to finish getting started as a coach. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome to our final episode of Getting Started as a Coach. Today, I speak to three brilliant and inspiring coaches, Jeannette Marshall, Jeremy Lazarus, and Chloë Garland. This expert panel brings decades of experience coaching diverse clients from their successful practices. All of them started out in coaching once upon a time, and I've asked them to cast their minds back to those early days to share what they wish they knew when they started. In this episode, we'll discuss the highs and lows of coaching, get some practical advice learned over many years, and thoughts to inspire and support new coaches. I know this will be a fun, informative, and thought-provoking discussion to finish getting started as a coach on a very high note. Welcome, Jeannette, Chloë, and Jeremy.
Hi.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Hi, Simone.
Delighted to have the three of you with me. And I'd love to start by asking you the question I've introduced each episode with, and that is, what's your definition of coaching? Jeannette, would you like to kick us off, please?
Well, this was a great opportunity for me to think about what my definition of coaching actually is. So what I came up with was coaching is a supportive and empowering process that meets the client where they are, maintains a belief in their inherent wholeness and capability, and helps them reach their personal and professional goals to be the best they can be.
That's a fantastic definition. Jeremy, would you like to build on that? Or do you have an alternative perspective?
I actually have a couple of alternatives. One, depends who I speak to. If I'm speaking to a more, inverted commas, official audience, or when I'm running training courses, I actually use the definition that the AC uses, which I read it out, it's on the website. A collaborative, solution-focused, results-orientated and systematic process in which the coach facilitates the enhancement of work performance, life experience, self-directed learning and personal growth of the coachee. And I think that's from Anthony Grant. When I'm speaking to prospective clients, I draw an analogy of sport. So most people will be aware of sports coaching, or tennis coaching, hockey coaching, whatever. And I explain that in sport, the coach is the expert. So my tennis coach, for example, teaches me how to improve my forehand, backhand, serve, volley, etc. Whereas in the workplace, we call that mentoring. So my tennis coach has to be the expert, whereas a coach in the workplace doesn't need to know anything about the particular subject. And in fact, sometimes it's better if the coach doesn't know. So they can ask the questions that these seemingly, inverted commas, silly questions or dumb questions, which actually can shed light on a matter. So that's my approach.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. Nice to hear the two different perspectives between the, kind of internally and those who might be new and needing a more grounding definition. And Chloë, what does coaching mean to you?
Well, coaching, it's actually one of those frustrating things that's quite difficult to explain until you get coached. So often I use usually two metaphors to help understand what coaching is. The first is that coaching is a little bit like having a mirror being held up to your personality. And that mirror allows you to gain clarity, both on what your strengths are, but sometimes on what your blind spots are too. And sometimes that mirror, the image that we see reflected back, can be sometimes a bit confronting, but it's in those confronting moments that often we grow in that kind of discomfort. And then the second metaphor, which is, I think, quite a common one, is the whole idea about if you put a plant in a concrete box, it's unable to grow. It doesn't have the right conditions. But if you give it sunlight and soil and all the things that it needs, it intuitively knows how to grow, and it intuitively knows itself what it needs. And that's such a beautiful image of what coaching does. I feel that what coaching allows us in this crazy world that we live in, it gives us the right conditions, being listened to, not being judged, to allow somebody to actually find the answers for themselves. So those are the two metaphors I like to describe what coaching is to me.
Those are three wonderful definitions. And while they're diverse and reflect the nature of coaching itself being dynamic and broad in scope and, ever changing and evolving, I think all three of you also spoke to the importance of the relationship, creating conditions, supporting, allowing space for a client or coachee to discover themselves. So those are wonderful definitions. So I'd love to know from each of you, what is the most rewarding thing you find about being a coach? Jeremy, let's start with you, please.
For me, it's just seeing people grow, develop, and achieve their outcomes and goals normally much quicker than they would if they didn't have coaching. And sometimes the transformations that occur where, sometimes just one thing changes everything for someone. Maybe there's a belief they had, which they thought was the truth, but it's actually a belief. And when they change that belief, it can make such a huge difference, not just to that particular aspect of their life, but all of their life and forever.
Gosh, where to start? I'll probably pick maybe two things. I think the first thing is seeing people make more intentional choices about their lives. I often get the sense when I work with people, I work a lot with people around their careers, and they have this sense of sort of floating through their life. And I think one of the things that coaching allows people to do is to make more intentional choices about where they're going and what they want, that's more aligned with who they are. And when you start to see that, when you start to see people swim rather than float and reorientate their lives, it's incredibly rewarding. And I think the second thing is maybe a slightly more selfish, and that is it's a real privilege to be allowed into somebody's life and to hear what people have to say and to be let into their internal worlds. And I think that often you find and you meet people who have gone through the same things that you've been through, and it can be incredibly inspiring, and you can learn a lot yourself as a coach about how to navigate things in your own life. So that's more something that I specifically get from it, but the list is endless.
And to build on both of those things, it's interesting for me because often when people come to coaching, they think they're going to make great strides. They're going to be the best they can be, like the next minute after you've had half an hour with an excellent coach, you're going to move forward. And the truth is the magic happens in those gaps in between the coaching. And the thing that I often say to my clients is, coaching's a bit like dynamite. It's the TNTs, the tiny noticeable things that people do differently that can make a real difference to how they are, where they get in their career, what they want to achieve. And for me, there's probably two things that really give me a high as a coach. One is when clients come back to me. I had one email me just before this call actually to say they'd gone for a promotion and they've actually got it as a result of the work that we were doing, which is fabulous. And I can't take credit for that. They did all the hard work, but I was able to facilitate. And I've never quite got over that kind of excitement and enjoyment of that when a client does that. And the other thing is when a client actually realises that they're in the wrong place place. They're a square peg in a round hole. And it's been my privilege in my career as a coach to help a lot of people move well out of the environment they're in into something where they can really flourish. And I think that's really important. I was really lucky when I started coaching. The contract that I first got, which was to coach 300 people in one of the high street banks, they allowed and expected 20% of those people to not be in place at the end of that coaching engagement, which at the time, you know, we're talking 1996, that was really forward thinking. And I've never forgotten that. And I've also always contracted when I'm working with a sponsor that actually there may be an opportunity or a possibility that some of those people won't be there by the time I finish working with them.
Those are all such lovely thoughts to hear and how you find rewarding. And I don't have as many years of experience as many of you, but it's heartening for me as a newer coach to hear the kind of common theme of helping and supporting people to discover the things that either they already know or that, or kind of teasing them out of them in order to take them forward to a better place, you know, and that continues to be a core theme of the coaching relationship and coaching success is a really heartening thing to hear. I'd love to maybe change the direction a little bit and speak to if there's a coaching myth you'd like to bust, something that you hear out there all the time or that just really niggles at you. Jeannette, let's start with you on this one, please.
Could you see by my face I'm itching to share?
I could.
Yeah. So for me, it's that whole get rich quick. You know, pay $10,000 and you can make £1 million tomorrow and you're going to be the best coach you can be. You know, the real world isn't like that. With anything, including coaching, you get out of it what you put in. It's hard work. It takes tenacity and perseverance. You have to have a good sense of humour. You know, for some of the things that may not work in the way that you'd expected them to do. And it's really, for me, it's really about keeping your network going, you know, asking for those referrals and testimonials when you're working with clients. When you start out, making sure that you make the most of the network you currently have. Don't think you've got to throw everything away because you're now a coach and forget everything that you learned before, because for me that's been a rich source of employment for me. So yeah, definitely don't think you're going to get rich quick, or if at all.
I'm so glad you speak to that, Jeannette, because it's like an assault when you start in coaching or for anyone to navigate all the promises about how you can do things fast and at great reward. Jeremy, what would you like to add?
Just to build on what Jeannette said, actually, one of the things that really bugs me is when you see these kind of weekend coaching courses advertised and you could become a great coach after just 2 days. Now, to me, that as Jeannette was alluding to, it takes a lot of effort to be good at anything. Actually, not just coaching, but certainly coaching. It takes a lot of training, a lot of development, a lot of soul searching sometimes, because you know we sometimes have to overcome our own challenges to be able to coach other people effectively. Another thing that really bugs me is the idea that it's not okay to be directive. Now, you may, Jeannette, Chloë, you may disagree with me. It's totally fine. For me, at times, I think clients want us to tell them or direct them or nudge them into what to do. Not all the time, but they want us to be a mentor. Yeah. That's why you often see these, confidence coaches or the parent coaches, that they want someone who's got experience in certain areas to fill in some of the gaps they don't have. So I think it's important that we as coaches know when we are being directive or if you like mentoring on one hand compared to coaching on the other.
Definitely. And Jeremy, I know Chloë wants to add, but I just wanted to jump in there. I cannot see the point in letting a client struggle when they absolutely don't know what they don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. Why would I put another human being through that stress and strain when their lives are difficult enough in work anyway? But for me, it's all about the contracting. We've spoken about this in the past, Jeremy. It comes back to the contracting. And I will say to my clients, at times I will ask permission to step out of coaching, put on a mentoring hat, a training hat, a counselling hat, whatever it might be, provided that's within the boundaries of my expertise. And I'm not a counsellor. I just need to add that in there. I'm not a counsellor. And that's what I do. And I think that's a better and more healthy relationship for everybody.
I had a great supervisor once that said, if there's something that's burning in your mind that you think is going to help your client and you're withholding it because you're trying to stick to the coaching rules. Who are you serving? And I think, Jeannette, you're absolutely right. It's how you frame it. If you really want to be directive, it's how you frame that. If you really want to share something more of yourself, it's how you frame that, and being very intentional with how you perform those different hats, and how you wear those different hats. Another thing also to add to Jeremy's point, I often find that when it comes to coaching courses, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. One other kind of myth or thing that came up recently is I have this coaching group, mentoring group for young coaches in their 20s and 30s, and we sort of support each other to grow our businesses. And somebody mentioned something called the coaching ick. And essentially within the kind of, within my friendship group, everybody thinks that everyone's a coach. Everyone's becoming coaches. Everyone and their dogs are becoming a coach. And it creates this kind of coaching ick, this feeling of, oh my gosh, it just doesn't seem like something that's legitimate. And I think that's a myth that I'd love to bust, because I feel like a lot of people perceive the coaching industry as sort of these Instagram coaches, these 5 steps to be the most confident person that you are. Yeah. And I find that a bit of a shame, because I feel like it's giving sort of one stereotype to what coaching really is, whereas actually what it is those lovely definitions that we gave at the beginning, that's facilitating other people's growth. So that would be the myth I'd love to bust.
Definitely. And I think, just to build on that, Chloe, there's definitely an educational piece that membership associations can do around that. I am still going into quite big blue chip organisations explaining that coaching is not one-to-one training and it's not mentoring, and it is something entirely different. And I would love for people to really understand what coaching actually is, instead of making these kind of assumptions around what they think it is, because, you know, somebody's got a great Instagram place or position. So
those are great myths, and I think will be helpful. And I can imagine lots of people mentally adding to the myths they'd like to bust as they're listening to the episode. And I think a number of the episodes that have come before this one do speak to exactly these myths in certain ways, the importance of training and CPD, how accreditation and supervision can serve a coach, the importance of the associations for self-regulation in coaching, and to establish standards and ethical practices as well. So it's really great to hear you speaking to those, even though they're all your personal bugbears.
Just to add to that and build on what's been said, so I used to be an accountant many years ago, and I think most professions, the accountants, law, medicine, they have a set of standards and ethics. And the more we as coaches can be seen as a profession, it's going to serve all of us within the profession, and it will serve our clients as well.
Absolutely.
So going back to Jeanette's point about education, accreditation, absolutely.
So now I'd like to get a sense from you on the greatest challenge you've each experienced and how you overcame that.
The greatest challenge at the beginning is the very obvious one, which is getting your first clients. It's probably the question that most new coaches ask, which is how on earth do we get the new clients? And I think that's the thing that I remember most, that being the most challenging in the beginning. I always say to people that my strategy was basically throwing as much at the wall as possible and seeing what stuck. I tried everything shy of leafleting and putting leaflets through doors right at the beginning. I didn't let pride stop me from being creative when I was trying to try different marketing techniques, whether it's a Facebook group, whether it's going into a university doing a talk, or whether it's going into a business. The most challenging thing is keeping your confidence when you're not getting the results. And that window of time at the beginning of your coaching practice is the time when you are incredibly vulnerable. And it's the time when you need what I call stabilizers. You need some systems in place around you when you're quite vulnerable, in order to keep you strong through that period when you're just relying on your own confidence and motivation, and you're not getting those results through. So the things that I use that were really helpful, number one, having a mentor, somebody in the coaching profession who has already achieved the things that you would like to achieve, because it's a continual reminder that results actually are possible. And that's the kind of golden nugget that you need to keep reminding yourself when you're struggling with that confidence. Because I know so many coaches who've spent a year or a year and a half and they're still not getting the results, and they give up because it's so difficult to keep yourself motivating. So in that period, trying to find those stabilizers, for me, it was people. It was mentorship, accountability partners, working with people who were on a similar pathway to me, and navigating that kind of confidence and imposter syndrome and all that kind of stuff. That was probably, for me, the most challenging part of building the coaching practice.
Thanks for sharing that, Chloe. Jeannette, what would you add? What's been your greatest challenge?
I think Chloe's exactly right. And for me, it was about learning really early on that actually the marketing you do today is not necessarily going to give you results tomorrow or next week. And I kept, I'm a bit of a nerd, I kept meticulous records of how long it took me to get particular clients. And my average, even now, is from first contact to first delivery is anything from 15 to 18 months. Which is a huge amount of time when you think about it. And that's when I'm doing other stuff, not just coaching. You know, I might be in there training, I might be doing some mentor programs, I might be delivering talks around different things. So I think it's about being realistic about that. I would absolutely agree, having the right people around you, Chloe, is invaluable. And there's more than one person on this in this situation who I've learnt on heavily over the years, haven't I, Jeremy? At different times to sort of bend ears and commiserate and also to celebrate. You know, when you get those small wins, it's so important. And it's such an isolating thing. When I first started coaching, all but the first dozen of my clients on the program that I mentioned, I coached them on the telephone. I was so lonely. You know, I couldn't even see people then. You know, we didn't do Zoom or Skype then. It was all on the telephone. And I can remember feeling incredibly lonely and early on joining a group of coaches, and we used to have virtual coffee breaks and we used to bring each other up and just gee each other on, you know, because it can be a hard slog when you're on your own. And of course, that was reiterated during COVID. So many coaches suddenly realised you couldn't go out and meet people in the flesh, you had to do it from home, and it was quite interesting to see that cycle kind of come round again. But the biggest challenge for me was me, actually. You know, am I good enough to do this? Can I do it? I landed a great contract to start with. That was a fluke. You know, how could I carry on? It was all of those things. And in fact, it wasn't until I'd finished my first contract, which took me 18 months to run out, that I actually thought, oh, maybe I better go and see if I can get trained in this thing called coaching, because I don't know if I'm doing it right.
And I just want to echo what you both said. And yes, Jeannette, I think I've learned on you a couple of times as well. If I cast my mind back to the early 2000s, or like 1999 when I started, I think some of the key challenges for me were mainly marketing. How do I get clients? Should I niche or not niche? Because I'm trained in NLP, and with NLP you can do so much for so many people. And of course, if you market, I can help anyone with anything, the chances are you won't be able to help anyone with anything because it's too general. So even though we as coaches could help many people, it's probably better to focus on a particular niche and expand from there. I think the other challenge, as I think back, at times in the early days, I probably took ownership for clients' results. In myself, if they weren't getting the results I wanted, I took that very personally, a bit like the imposter syndrome that other people have mentioned. And I think it's important for me to really learn my job is to coach, their job is to achieve the results.
And I think when you really, really absorb that message, you get so much more freedom in your coaching. That kind of performance anxiety that you get when you're, oh gosh, are they getting what they want out of it? Is this being as useful as it possibly can be? One other just challenge I just reflected on, I think, because coaching was really my first proper career, which is quite unusual. And I know that that's becoming more and more common. And one of the challenges that I faced being in my 20s when I started coaching was the perceptions of other people. So I had a lot of advice about, well, maybe you should start an industry first, or maybe you should, I don't think how could you possibly be a coach? And you can imagine my parents' reaction when I came home and I said, I'm going to do coaching. And immediately people are, well, how can you do that if you've not necessarily experienced as much as the other coaches? And that's something that I think a lot of young coaches are faced with. As we all know, that coaching is not necessarily about having all of the experiences. It's about being trained and asking the right questions and the intuition. So other people's perceptions of your career and your decisions, I also found quite challenging at the beginning.
And just to add to that, actually, Chloe, I can remember when I told my friends and family that I was giving up my job as finance director of a company to become a coach, they thought I was mad. I'd really lost my marbles. So, and going back actually to what we've all said, I think in terms of checking if the client's getting what they want, really that's about our own insecurity at the time. So I think for me, it's about trusting ourselves, trusting the coaching process, and trusting the client that they'll get the results. But if they really want to get it, they'll be able to get the results.
And in some ways, the decision to become a coach is reflective of almost what we want for our clients too, of that intentionality of writing your own story, of choosing your own narrative, despite what other people think and perceive about that decision. Again, it's that mirror.
I love how you're having this discussion, and at the core of that are some of the behaviors and attributes that make coaches such wonderful people. It's the empathy, it's the sense of community, it's the trust, the importance, and the focus on relationships. And, for some of us, we come to that later in careers and in life, and others sooner. But there are so many kind of commonalities in the challenges you're sharing. And thank you for that honest and kind of vulnerable overview of what you felt. And you mentioned imposter syndrome. That has come up in almost every single episode we've done through this series of coaches. And between you all, you have decades, possibly century almost, of experience here, but that uncertainty and that belief of am I enough? And it's balm to a newer coach's soul to hear about how to get clients and the struggles and things. So thank you all for sharing that. And we started to touch on it, so I'm going to call out that elephant in the room a little bit more and ask you all about the reality of revenue from coaching. So I'd love to know about whether you do share pricing, or actually, of course, you share your pricing, but how and when you share pricing. And also if you feel that pro bono or discounts work to attract clients. Those are some of the questions that a newer coach or someone who is going out on their own, maybe after internally coaching or coaching within a syndicate or with a group, are facing a lot at an early point in their coaching practice. So, Jeremy, can I start with you with this one, please?
Sure. So I don't publish my prices for coaching. I publish my prices for training courses, but not for coaching. When do I have that conversation? Normally I want to do a bit of research if I can to find out enough about the organization, because I do offer differential pricing depending on the size of the clients. So I'll find out also what the client wants, what they're looking for, and then I can put together a package, for example. It could be one session, but it could be 6 sessions, 10 sessions, whatever it may be. And I'll quote normally for the package rather than per session, because generally speaking, the clients are paying for the outcome. They're not paying for our time. They don't care what the hourly rate is as long as they get the outcome that they want. In terms of pro bono, look, I have done pro bono coaching, but there has to be a compelling reason to do so. Because what I find is the more a client has got at stake, the more likely it is that they're going to take the coaching seriously and do what it takes to get the results. Because as we've alluded to, sometimes for a client to achieve the results, they have to face their challenges, face their own demons. And if they're not paying anything for it, or if they don't have anything at stake, they may kind of avoid the real challenges that are going to make a difference. In terms of inverted commas, discounts, again, I prefer the term flexible pricing rather than offering discounts. So if they have 6 sessions, it's probably going to be cheaper per session than if they have 1 session, for example. So that's my broad approach. And I think it will depend for different clients, different coaches, if they're in particular niches where it's very defined, like, well, not so much coaching, but think about hypnotherapy, for example. If someone is going to help someone stop smoking, there'll be normally a price for that. But I think for coaching, I think it's so flexible that it depends on on a client-by-client basis. That's my view.
The pro bono debate, I don't usually give pro bono sessions, but what I do is pilots. I'll do pilots for new programs, for group programs, for working with companies. And essentially, and actually, if I could turn back the clock and go back to me just starting coaching, what I would have done in order to attract new clients, and the pro bono thing comes into this, is I would say, okay, I'm doing a pilot program for a discounted price in return for video testimonials, feedback, reviews, all of this kind of thing, so that you don't feel uncomfortable asking for those really, really important nuggets of information back from the clients. So I think you can reframe pro bono as pilots. I'm just piloting a group training program, and in response to that, I do charge them, but just a smaller amount. I've got so many brilliant testimonials. They've posted about it, and essentially it set me up for my second pilot, and I'll probably run about 3. And so, especially if you're somebody that's feeling a little bit nervous at the beginning of your coaching business, it's a really nice but still professional way to run those first few coaching programs. And then when it comes to the question you asked, Simone, about sharing pricing, I'm sort of on the fence a little bit about this, but I don't share my pricing on my website. I understand why people do, because it's being transparent. But I would probably never have signed up for my coach if I'd seen how much he charged on his website. So I think it's really important to build that relationship and see the impact of coaching. And so I work with businesses, and I also work with individuals. For individuals, I charge people based on what they earn. So there'll be different brackets, and they tell me which bracket that they're in, and I don't ask for any proof. And then for companies, again, similarly to Jeremy, what I do is I have a design phase. So what I will say to an organization is I'd say, look, this is what I charge us for designing a coaching program for you, in which case I get to know the company, I get to know their needs, what's their definition of success, and then I will put together a coaching program or package that is reflective of the size of the organization, what they need. So it's, for me, my pricing is quite flexible depending on both the individual and the organization that I work with. And that's something that just kind of sits well for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think it's horses for courses, isn't it? Because I do put my coaching prices on my website, but like Jeremy, I do that in packages, and it's definitely flexible pricing. The more you have, kind of the more you do that. I also know of coaches who actually give a time allocation, and it's up to the client how they use that, whether they have it in hour sessions or 20-minute sprint sessions or whatever it is, which is also another interesting approach. But what I also know is that I don't put pricing on my training, which is the opposite to Jeremy, which is interesting, because I'd rather go in and find out from the organisation, because there are some organisations that I've found you can put your regular price in and they won't look at you because they think you can't know what you're doing because it's so cheap, depending what kind of category of client they're in. So I learned early on to make sure I sort of tested the water with them first. And as Chloe said, I've got a design rate. So I've got a day desk rate when I'm designing, which is roughly 50% of my delivery rate, depending on what that is with organisations. And also when I go into organisations, if I then deliver coaching on the back of training that I've done, I've got a different set of rates that I do there, because they've already achieved the value that they want, because otherwise they wouldn't be talking to me about coaching their individuals around the training that I've just delivered. So I think it's just be flexible with that and test the water. And you want, in my experience, you want a client to go, ooh, and then they'll go yes. You don't want them to go yes immediately, because then you could have upped your design rate or your delivery rate or whatever it might be.
And just to say, for my training courses, it's where there's a particular qualification. So if I can shamelessly plug the fact I'm an AC accredited trainer and also the ILM level 5, level 7, there's a set fee for that. So I want to be transparent. Everyone's paying the same price.
And there's nothing worse than walking away from a conversation and thinking, I think I've undersold myself.
Yeah.
It's really so important to make sure that you're happy with what your prices are.
And that brings me to the pro bono piece, because what I found early on was very often people don't value that, so either I rarely give pro bono now. I'm much more likely to either get an agreement where they pay it forward or a quid pro quo. So I might coach someone who's a marketeer and they'll give me an hour's marketing development or whatever that is. Much more likely to do that. And I appreciate for coaches starting out, when you're trying to get your hours, sometimes pro bono is the only way to do it. So in that instance, I would advocate hooking up perhaps with a charity to deliver that, so that there's a different way of a methodology of delivering that. So of course, you still need to be supervised, you need to be insured, you need to be all of those things, which is really hard if there's no income coming in as a result of the hard work you're putting out, and to keep it in balance. So make sure that you're not doing all pro bono, because actually you probably go hungry quite quickly. What you need to do is really temper it and say, this is the minimum or the maximum, I should say, that I'm going to do. And just really watch that, because it kind of creeps up on you that suddenly you're working all these hours, but there's nothing going to the bank.
And just to add to some of this, one of the mistakes I made in the very early days was I met a journalist who said, Jeremy, if you give me coaching, I'll get an article for you in a publication, or I'll write an article for you and I'll try and get it published. And also, I didn't put boundaries around how many sessions I'd be coaching her. So she wrote an article, it never got published, and I was coaching her for months for nothing. So that was a really big lesson. And going back to fast forward a few years, I kind of learned what Chloë was saying. So when I started specializing with athletes, I did 3 sessions with athletes on condition that they would, as Chloë was saying, do some kind of testimonial and recommend X number of people. So there was a kind of exchange of energy rather than me just giving. So that's something I wish I'd have known much earlier.
That was so funny as you were telling that story, Jeremy, until you got to the she, I thought it was the same journalist that I fell for as well. I did the same thing.
Okay, right.
So it's great to hear those perspectives from you all. And there's categorically common themes there: flexibility, having the ability and taking the time to understand the client or the organization and the reality that you're trying to deliver something for, being fixed in your value and knowing what is the right price for you and holding your nerve in asking for it. So all of those, I think, are great pieces of advice for a new coach starting out, and certainly speak to something that's come up again and again. And if I may also add, in one of the other episodes with Mark Crossfield, we talked about some of the basics of getting started, and he spoke about the importance of organization and planning and things like bookkeeping. So keeping track of your hours, keeping track of what you're paying people to do for you, but also what people are paying you for coaching. So you have consistency, you can see what lands, and starting to kind of build up that almost body of evidence behind your pricing strategy, because your pricing and your proposition are mindful business strategies that any coach or solopreneur should have. So fantastic to have you sharing those perspectives. So I'd love to ask you all about something that you would change about your coaching development path. What would you do differently if you were starting out on your learning or experience journey? Chloë, let's start with you, please.
I know the answer to this immediately, which is I would try to be a beginner for longer. I think when I first started, I was very conscious of the fact that I was beginning, so tried to kind of prove that I knew what I was talking about. I often say to my clients, are you proving or are you improving? And I think I was in the kind of proving mindset rather than the improving mindset. And I would have loved to have gone back and to be able to go in with a client, a new client, and say, I'm new at this. I want to try a few new tools out. I want to try a few new techniques. But I think at the beginning of my coaching career, I was quite nervous to do that because I was so worried about what that person would think, which seems crazy now, but I would have just loved to have gone back and allowed myself to be a beginner and to grow more slowly, especially when learning coaching, because there is so much to learn. So that's more of a mindset shift, but that would be the thing that I would change in terms of my development.
Jeannette, how about you?
I would not have carried the sense of shame that I did around what I did, in terms of, for years, I wasn't truthful about what I did with my clients when I was talking to other coaches, because so many coaches out there said, you can't talk about their past and don't, you're only future focused, I learnt really early on that the person sitting in front of you brings all of their experiences to bear in that communication, as do I. And for a long, long time, I hid that. It wasn't until I did my neuroscience training where it was like coming home, because it was like, yes, you can ask about their autobiographical history. You know, it makes them who they are. Those neural pathways are set with all the experiences that they bring, all those emotions. But for years, I hid that, and I'd be very shamed about that. And I think that's what I would change. I would have more belief in what I was doing and share that more openly, and not be scared that others were going to look down upon me.
Jeremy, what about you?
Probably three things. One, I would have got accredited much sooner. I've been part of the AC's accreditation team, as Jeannette knows, working closely with Jeannette for many years, since I think 2013. And if I think back to what was required to become an accredited coach in, say, 1999 or 2000, it was much less than it was in 2007 or something. And so at whatever point someone's listening to this, it's going to be easier to get accredited now than it will be in 5 years down the line, let's say. So get accredited. I probably would have done a formal coaching course much sooner. So when I started, when it was 99, I'd already done some training, but it wasn't a formal coaching course. It's a personal development course, which had a lot of coaching. And I think in those days, there weren't that many formal coaching courses out there. And I think the third thing is I would have got a supervisor much sooner. Again, supervision wasn't really around in whatever it was, 99. Whereas now I think it's expected and much more accepted to have a coaching supervisor. And a good supervisor would have helped me, I think, helped me greatly in the early days.
Thank you all for sharing your reflections there. It's like a little glimpse into the future path for so many people as they're starting out. So I know that many of the audience will be scribbling things down furiously at this point. I'd love to also kind of continue in that theme and ask you, what's the one thing you couldn't do without as a coach in terms of your kind of practical day-to-day work?
So difficult to choose just one. It's so hard. I've got like a series of different tech bits and bobs, Calendly, things that can automate your software, QuickBooks. I use a tracking software called Ignition, Notion, all these kinds of things. But I think if I had to choose one thing that's probably really changed how I am and show up as a coach is my accountability partner. I've got an incredible, another coach called Caitlin Hall, who's a career coach. And we started being each other's accountability partner at the beginning of the year. And I don't think I would have been able to have achieved what I have without her. So we check in once a month. Every Monday, we send each other what are our priorities for the week ahead. And then on the following Monday, we'll check back and be like, okay, well, have we achieved those things? Because I think coaching can be a bit of a lonely journey. And it's one thing that I think a lot of coaches struggle with, especially if they've come from working in organizations. And so having that accountability partner to constantly just check in, am I doing the things that are the priority? And also just, if you're not having a great day, Caitlin and I will message each other, and it really, really helps. So I think now, above and beyond all the kind of great tech platforms that you can use, I think that would be the most impactful tool, I guess, that I've used for the last year.
So Jeannette, what would you not be able to do without?
It's very similar to Chloe. It's the people I choose to have around me. I learned early on that no person is an island. You can't do this on your own. And there are different people I would go to for different things. And without those people, and some people come into your life for a reason or a season, don't they? So some of those people have been around forever. Others have come in and gone, and I've learned something from them, including clients. Chloe said earlier, we learn such a lot from our clients, and it's such a privilege. But I think probably knowing who to go to when is the most important thing for me, whatever that might be, whether it's to celebrate or to challenge or to have someone challenge me. I've got a great coach that I work with who just absolutely gets me and absolutely knows when I'm trying to wriggle out something. And I think that's really helpful to kind of name it and call me on it in a way that I can choose to hear it rather than become defensive around it. And I think sometimes it takes time to find those right people to have around you. But definitely for me, it's the people. It's all about the people.
And I can only echo what Jeannette and Chloe have said. I think one thing I would add, I'm not sure it's exactly the point of the question, Simone, but I think for me, the tool or resource, it's the desire, the ability to be results focused. I absolutely want my clients to achieve the results that they want. And that's something which really drives me forward. And I keep a list of all the actions they say they're going to do. And on the first session, I want to get really clear what their goals are. And we work towards that big time. And having people who I can bounce ideas off of, or say, help, I'm struggling here. What do I do with this particular client? Or for this personal challenges in my life? We're all human beings as coaches. If I've got a challenge, there are people, and I know I've spoken to Jeannette several times as well. I'll be upfront about that, and other people I know as well. So, yeah.
One of the things that's come out very strongly through all the discussions in preparing the podcast is the importance of community and how much energy and support and inspiration that coaches get from each other. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that also the organizations can bring through, but preserving and actively building your community in the coaching sense is also a really important area. So thank you for sharing. So thinking more on your kind of favorite things, what would be a favorite learning development resource? Where do you go for CPD or for new ideas or fresh inspiration? Jeannette, maybe start with you.
Gosh, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I don't know if I'm just incredibly lucky or if I just happen to attract people who I can learn from. But obviously, I recently left the AC, and since then, I just seem to have fallen into place with people who I'm learning so much, and everything that I learn from one person, I can pick up and put into the next thing that I'm doing. It's been almost like suddenly all the strands are kind of coming together, and the universe is kind of getting me to focus on what I need to focus on. But it's everything, conversations that I have, books that I read, clients that I'm working with. I can't say that there's any one tool or one thing. Just be open to what's out there. And there's a saying, I think, that says, you see something once, just recognize it. You see something the second time and your ears kind of prick up. See something the third time comes across your desk, then go and do something about it. Somebody is telling you. And I've absolutely given into that over this last year. And it's paid dividends, really. I'm working on some really exciting projects in companies that I wouldn't have gone into otherwise. And it's really been, I think, being open to those conversations and just being curious about what other people are doing. So perhaps not the answer you were looking for, Simone.
No right answers. That's a great one, that inspiration comes from everywhere, and follow your intuition as well. Yeah. So that's fantastic. Jeremy, what about you?
A few things, really. One, because I'm a coach assessor, what I find is reading through the applications, I learn a lot. I learn about different coaching models that people have. So I find out about that. There's actually running my own coach training courses. I have to stay up to speed and be on top of my game. It kind of keeps me honest, if I can use that term. And CPD, there's all sorts where there's videos. I mean, there's so many videos out there on YouTube and whatever. And obviously, I think it's important to be discerning about who we listen to. But the various events for the AC, the other professional coaching bodies and other coaching networks. So there's all sorts. Also, I'm really interested in leadership as well. So there's various leadership forums. So where do we stop? There's so much to learn.
There's no time to coach.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. And Chloe, how about you?
Well, it's one of the beautiful things about this industry is that you could literally keep on learning forever. I think, well, I'll answer the question in sort of two ways. First of all, how I often find inspiration for what to learn, and I will choose a favorite resource as well. So I mentioned that we have a sort of a WhatsApp group of we call it just the Young Coaches group, and there's maybe about 20, 25 people on there. And recently I said I'm curious to learn. I want to learn something new, and everybody sent loads of courses on it that they've done. So I think hearing what other courses people have done is really helpful. So having your own little community. But I think my favorite resource that I've ever used is, I don't know if you've come across Yannick's coaching lab. He's an incredibly inspiring coach. And essentially what he does is every month, I believe, yes, it's every month, you can log into a Zoom call where where a sort of master coach within their field is coaching somebody, and you can sit and observe for 40 minutes and then afterwards ask questions. You can ask questions to the coach or to the coachee about their experience, why they asked a specific question. And I love, I'm so curious about how other people are coaching and their own styles. Again, you've got to be a little bit careful with it because you don't just want to adopt somebody else's style, but it's absolutely fascinating. I guess to Jeremy's point, when he's looking at sort of the applications, it's seeing other people's style and getting inspiration. Even if you just take one particular question and use it in your own coaching practice, it's just really, really inspiring to be able to talk to people about their process.
Are there any barriers that we as coaches need to break down to support the industry and ongoing development for coaches?
A couple of things. I think there's still, I think somebody mentioned it earlier on, there's a lack of awareness about what coaching actually is and the benefits of coaching. So I think if we were even more professional as a coaching profession, whilst many people hopefully listening to this would see the benefits of doing good and effective coaching courses and being accredited, anyone, my mum could set up as a coach. There's nothing to stop her. So I think us as a profession really professionalizing the profession would help, and just having lots of articles and information about the benefits of coaching. If the professions had that on their website, that would help us as coaches, the coaching community. We wouldn't need to sell coaching so much because people would come, the prospective buyers would want to come and seek it actively. And to an extent they do that. I think it would help if there was even more of that. So those are my thoughts at the moment.
In terms of barriers, I think there's two things that I'd love to see improved in the near future. One is diversity within the coaching industry, diversity in terms of the coaches specifically, and also more equal opportunity to access coaching. So I think coaches can do that in a number of different ways. I think Jeannette mentioned it before in terms of the pro bono stuff, working with charities. So I have worked with two different organizations, one called the Urban Scholars, which is all about giving opportunities to young people from disadvantaged areas in London. And so I would go and do training and coaching for that organisation. And another one, which is called the Open Private School, which is quite similar, working with young people between the ages of 12 and 18, connecting them with mentors in industries so that they can have more opportunities as they leave school. So I think that's another space or another barrier that would be incredible to break down as coaches.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with both Chloe and Jeremy on that. I think there's a lot to be said for, the economic restrictions on individuals, whether that be by dint of birth or, their place of birth. They cannot access good quality training. I think that's really important that coaching is accessible to everyone. And I'd really like to kind of reshape the world one coaching conversation at a time. And to do that, you need well-trained, accredited coaches who maintain the standards, who raise the standards, who work within the boundaries of their areas of expertise. And also, if we think about recent events with COVID, most people are suffering from some level of trauma, so therefore it becomes more difficult to actually separate out kind of the coaching, the counselling piece. So we need well-trained coaches who are accredited, who work within a code of ethics and have standards that they maintain and really understand what they're doing so that we don't harm the clients that we're working with. I've seen too many, or mopped up after too many coaches where coaching interventions haven't gone well, and I've been called in to sort that out, and that's a really difficult place to start from. So I think education is at the heart of this, certainly, and to make it accessible to all. That would be my thing.
I think hopefully all working together and leveraging the organizations. I know the AC does a lot of work in these spaces as well, is a great opportunity for all of us. So looking beyond to the kind of positive futures, what excites you about coaching today? Chloe?
I love that it's just becoming normal. to have a coach. When I first set up my company, one of the things I said is that I would love to hear coaching being spoken about at the dinner table. And I had a young client in the mid-20s recently, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, last night we were out for dinner and we were all comparing what we were working on with our coaches." And they realized that everybody around the dinner table was having coaching. And I was like, it's happening. And I think that's something really, really exciting, especially within young people. It's becoming kind of cool to have a coach. And I love that it's sort of being rebranded in a way, and people are taking their personal development seriously, and they're getting excited about it. So that's the thing and it's not met with, what's that? What is coaching? There is a sense that it's becoming a little bit more normal, which I love.
And what about you, Jeannette?
I think for me, the excitement is I do a lot of training of individuals to become coaches. And I was recently out in Athens, which was really lovely. And obviously I don't speak Greek, but they spoke brilliant English. But they opted to do all the activities in Greek, and I gave them that choice. And for me, it's really exciting to see how much you can pick up. You don't even need to know the language. You can see when people are building rapport, when they're being challenged, when they're getting really emotional. We had some men in tears. I have to say, it wasn't because I was a dictator of a trainer. It wasn't because of that, but it was the emotions running high. And I think that excites me, to get people to be really open about how they're feeling and have a safe space to be vulnerable and to kind of share what's really going on for them. I think it's just such a privileged place to be, and really fills me with excitement.
And Jeremy, what excites you about the future of coaching?
Well, certainly what Chloe was saying about coaching being more mainstream or normal. When I started coaching in 1999, when I told people I was a coach, they asked me, "Oh, what sport?" Or what's that? Whereas now most people will have come across life coaching, business coaching, whatever. I think what also excites me is that more and more people are becoming accredited coaches and signing up to the code of ethics and standards and CPD and supervision, etc. And also, I think one of the developments is team coaching. So the last few years, team coaching has become really quite common, and so a lot more people will have experienced some form of coaching, if not individually, then as a team, which again raises awareness and makes it more likely that some of the members of that team will want individual coaching. So it's going to help spread the word, so to speak.
It's lovely to hear where your energy and your excitement is focused these days. And I'm going to also be a bit cheeky and answer this one. I think it's wonderful that coaching as a profession, even within its lack of, let's say, official regulation, that almost creates this, or maybe it does create this incredibly open, dynamic, curiosity-based profession. And that is, I think, allowing the coaching community as a whole to be very open to things like emerging technologies, the importance of diversity and inclusion, the different kind of cultural influences that exist, and connections to science and psychology that a lot of other professions cannot have, or just naturally don't, because of the communities of people working within them. So, as a newer coach and someone who did leave a professional career as well, at the point where people are like, "Are you mad?" That was one of the things that really attracted me to it. I think we're at a very exciting point where coaching is, as you all spoke to, seen as normal, as beneficial, as absolutely almost ubiquitous now. And that's a wonderful place to be when the people delivering it are curious and so engaged in the profession. So I'd love to wrap up and ask each of you what your key pearl of wisdom for a new coach would be. You've already shared so much, but I'm sure you've got one last little nugget to share with each of us. Jeremy, would you lead us off, please?
Sure. Well, I've got 4 actually. Some of them we mentioned earlier. So study and learn, get qualified, focus on your marketing. We've mentioned this. And something I learned to my detriment, delegate. So for example, sure, as an ex-accountant, of course I could do my own bookkeeping. And for the first couple of years I did. But that was really me hiding from going out there and meeting prospective clients. So delegate the stuff that you don't need to do and do only the stuff that you can do, which is getting out there, selling yourself.
Thanks, Jeremy. Chloe, how about you?
I'm going to steal that one from Jeremy and add another one. But I think that delegate before you're ready to. because I think there's a lag period where I don't know if I can afford I've got a content person now and an accounting person now, and people doing all the things that I'm not actually that good at. And it felt really uncomfortable because it is an investment, but you can only get to your next level of your business, of your development as a coach, once you've delegated the things that you don't want to be doing anymore. It's so, so important. So if it feels uncomfortable, that's when you should do it. And there's never going to be a point, because it's that step that's stopping you from getting to the next level. So I really wholeheartedly agree with Jeremy, and I wish I'd done it years before I did. And then I think the second thing is just, you're not asking for the world when setting up a coaching business. It is so possible to have an influx of clients. It really is just a process of making sure you're keeping confident in that period where you're not getting those results. I do believe that there's like a critical mass that you reach with your coaching clients where enough people are talking about you, and then suddenly the clients will start to come in. But it's just getting yourself to that point and reminding yourself it absolutely is possible. But a lot of people, they just don't quite wait long enough in order to cross that threshold. And word of mouth testimonials is generally going to be your most powerful marketing tool. So if there are 5 people who are raving about the work that you've done with them, that's probably going to be as much marketing as you'll need. So just keep going, stick it out. And I know that's kind of an obvious bit of advice, but it really it's the thing that I say to a lot of new coaches.
That's super advice. Thank you, Chloe. And Jeannette, to finish us off, please.
So I have 3 things that are slightly different, but would have made the world of difference to me as I kind of started out and even today. So I think the first thing is to do the work and know yourself, really understand what makes you tick, because as Chloe touched on earlier, there'll be similarities with clients, there'll be differences with clients, but really spend the time to know yourself inside out and get comfortable in your own skin. Took me a huge amount of time to do that, but I'm so glad I did, and the quality of my coaching definitely improved once I'd kind of done additional work on myself. The second thing is trust the coaching process, okay? Once you've learned it, you can throw it out the window. Accredited or not, you can throw it out the window, and be in service of the client who's in front of you. So give them what they need. I think that's really important, to trust the process. And the third thing is trust your intuition. Every time I've gone against that, that's come back to bite me big time. So if a question comes into your head, no matter how daft it sounds to you, ask your client that question, because that will be their aha moment, that thing that will make the biggest difference to them. So don't shortchange them just because you might feel you're going to sound or be a little foolish. I think it's worth just being vulnerable and saying, this has come into my head. How's that landing for you?
Thank you all so much for sharing your experience and wisdom with us through this whole reflective and inspiring episode. How can people learn more about your services or get in touch? So, Jeremy, where can they find you?
They can look at my website. If they Google Jeremy Lazarus Coach London, they'll find my website. The website is thelazarus.com. That's THELAZARUS.com. I'm on LinkedIn as well, and on Amazon and places like that.
Super. Thanks, Jeremy. Jeannette, how about you?
So you can find me at Marshall Veer Associates, which is my company. If you want to email me directly, remember there's 2 N's in my name. I lose an awful lot of emails because people don't spell my name properly. So that's Jeannette at marshallveerassociates.co.uk. I'm also on LinkedIn. Really happy to link with anyone who would like to link up with me and to learn more and be curious about what they're doing.
Fantastic. And Chloe, how about you?
Well, you can find my website, which is www.quarter-life.co.uk, or LinkedIn, Chloë Garland, or email me at chloe@quarter-life.co.uk.
Fantastic. And we'll include all of your details in the show notes so people can get in touch with you quickly. And before we finish, I just want to say a huge thanks to the podcast team for all their hard work on this series. Rob, Maxine, Miranda, and Smaranda, you've been an amazing team, and thanks so much for the continued hard work to bring such amazing content through the Association for Coaching's podcast channel. I've been Simone Sweeney, and it's been my pleasure to create Getting Started as a Coach. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on LinkedIn or at thrivewiththerise.com. Jeannette, Jeremy, Chloe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Simone.
Thank you, Simone.
Thanks so much, Simone.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organizations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. There, you can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insights from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.